Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. So what we need to really do in this video is kind of talk about the bigger picture pattern shifts that we're starting to see now that fall is ending and winter is beginning. And the main question that we're really going to have about much of the next several months is what will the U.S. drought picture look like through this winter? So we need to have a discussion about what's going on in the near-term pattern. We got to then talk about what's going on with the medium-term pattern in terms of what's controlling the flow over the next maybe 30 days. And then I'm going to finish this up with some new long-range data from the CPC. In next week's video, you will get brand new long-range updates from the European model as well. They're always the first to come out in any new month. So you've been looking here at a map while I've been talking about this of the last 30 days in terms of the percent of normal precipitation across the country. We start to see where the driest air is anchored. It's primarily here in the Central Plains. This is hitting the hard red winter wheat belt pretty hard. We've had some drier conditions also in the Eastern Corn Belt, but there's a lot of improvement expected in this area while we're not expecting the improvement here. Across North Carolina, we've been wetter than average for most of the state during this last month. If there's been a few drier places, it's been right up here, just closer to the coast down into the southeastern part of the state. So we're taking assessment here, and really it's because of this. Let me just pull up the latest map. Drought monitor, there it is. This was the newest drought monitor that was put out last week. And when you look across the country, we still have something like almost 80% of the land area in some form of drought. And we can see that we're up here in the second stage of drought in the southeastern part of North Carolina. So big questions, what is this going to look like as we go forward? All right. So let's start here and go right to what's going on with the pattern today. Now, the main features that we're thinking a lot about, especially for the Carolinas, is what's happening with this subtropical branch of the jet stream. There's some sense of ridging in this area, and that's the thing that really has kind of, I think, caused a lot of uncertainty in the near-term forecast over the next 15 days. That and the fact that the Pacific jet doesn't extend, it breaks up into two pieces here over the west. We continue to get these troughs that come down. That's part of what we call the negative Pacific North American pattern. We're then watching a large ridge build into Greenland, and that's also going to influence our weather here over the next 15 days. In other words, this is going to be a time period of very low performance in terms of forecasting. Things are going to change considerably with each new forecast. Now, what I'm watching most carefully is the fact that for much of the last month, we've seen a lot of cold air building up into the western United States, really anchored in western Canada down through Montana and north and South Dakota. And what we want to know is, can that air get let out? Now, last week's video, and if you follow my other reports throughout the week, we continue to see that this was going to be coming out around, well, maybe around the 12th, 13th, 14th, and then really after mid-month. But there was some uncertainty because of that southeastern ridge, which we continue to talk about. We're trying to start to build in just, if there is better evidence, we want to find it and kind of build into our forecast what we think the timing of that's going to be. So let's get to that bigger picture stuff right away. Now, something that could be helping this colder air come out will start to take shape later today. This is a look at the winds in the stratosphere, and we're specifically looking at the polar vortex. Now, right now, it's kind of elongated into two pieces. There's one there, and there's a second one here. This is not a strong look for the polar vortex. And remember, when the polar vortex is weakened, we increase the likelihood of letting cold air out across North America, maybe or Russia, Europe. It doesn't matter. Whenever it's disrupted, we watch for it to wobble around. And one of the things I'm concerned about is the piece that's moving right in through here is going to continue to be reinforced over the coming 10 to 15 days, meaning that the depth of these troughs could continue to get deeper in the troposphere, the layer of the atmosphere that we live in. So let's just distill this down into a couple of quick maps to kind of identify the main features over the next 15 days. I've got two in the maps here. The one on the left shows you the chance of getting less than a tenth of an inch of rainfall. What you notice is that it's Florida, the southwestern United States and Mexico, and then right here in the high plains. And of course, that's going to continue to cause problems with the hard red winter wheat belt in this area. We also see it's dry across the Canadian prairie. Now, what's keeping things quite wet from the mid-south almost to the mid-Atlantic is that ridge. So if the flow keeps coming around that ridge like this, and the jet stream's diving into the west, look how wet the west is going to be, and then ejects something like this, well, that could just continue to kind of squeeze into this area more fronts, and they lift the air more, and we get more precip. But you notice that the wettest conditions are primarily to the west of North Carolina. So we're going to take a look at what those totals are in just a few seconds. Now the temperature side of it, this is where it continues to be a struggle. Most of this next week, we're mild. We see above average temperatures. The pattern's going to be volatile. The temperature's going to change a lot, but we had thought that by the time we got to the end of this current week that we are in, that this cold air would be getting let out all the way to the Carolinas. And we just kicked that can down the road as we watched the weekend model trends, well, just suggest a different pattern. Last week, I didn't see it. I had no evidence to support this, but then we saw things evolve over the weekend, and now if we're going to get cold, it's going to be pretty late after or right around the very middle of the month. And that's all going to take place if this big Greenland ridge really develops. All right? So that's kind of the big picture over the next 2 weeks distilled down into 4 maps. Now, for this to happen, I want to show you what the jet stream must do. So you're looking down on the North Pole. This is the subtropical component of the jet stream we were just talking about running around that ridge. Here's the Pacific jet, which you'll watch will fail to extend beyond, well, just south of the Aleutian Islands. As we play this forward, what do we get? I mean, you see the extent of that southeastern ridge? You see the air diving into the west? It's running up here. It's being aided along by a trough that's developing over parts of the Canadian archipelago, but right here is where the new ridge is about to take shape. So as we go forward from middle of this week into the weekend and into early next week, we just see similar components to the same thing. The Pacific jet fails to extend. The flow dives into what we call this negative P&A pattern. That's a trough in the west. But what's going to happen is getting toward the middle of the month, we're going to start to see these troughs progress. And it's going to set up strong jet stream level winds right inside that area I just drew. And that's why our week 2 pattern looks much wetter than the week 1. That's very characteristic. See that little jet streak in there? That's very common when you end up getting big ridges over Greenland. Now we call this the negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation, which means if there's a ridge running up into Greenland, there has to be troughs on the upstream side of it. That's just how the atmosphere behaves. If you had a big trough over Greenland, then we'd have a bunch of warmth here over us that sticks around for a long time. So we just don't fully see that taking shape at this point. So if it's going to go over wet and if it's going to go over active, it's still another 7 days away from us, given we're going to watch for that ridge to form, and we're going to see these troughs kind of progressing out of the northwest. So what we see here is that over the next 7 days, the wettest conditions are right where the fronts are forming, which are going to stretch from the Tennessee and the Ohio River Valley up against the Appalachian Mountains back toward the Red River Valley. Outside of that, honestly, most places are relatively dry compared to normal. We're going to be watching for some snow possibly coming in here late in the Midwest, and systems continue to run down the western part of the United States. Now, the pattern when I tell you it's about is active, you're going to see in this animation what I'm talking about across the country. But you're also going to notice that the features that are dominating the pattern really correlate well to the upper level pattern I just mentioned. So what is that? Systems are going to come into the northwest like this. We're going to see high pressure cells coming out of the Canadian prairie. They're going to set up a frontal boundary right in through here, around which the subtropical highs coming in that direction, the flow around the other highs coming around that direction, and we're going to see how long it takes for the moisture to get to North Carolina. All right, so here we go. This is today, Monday morning. Let's play out there through the next couple of days. So what do we see? High pressure coming in, a large area over the parts of the mid-south to the southeast wet, but we're just going to struggle to bring that moisture through Tuesday across parts of North Carolina. Could you get some scattered showers? Yeah, but this is not the soaker. So going out there into Tuesday, what we have here is this. Here's the high right here. There's subtropical ridge here. So again, that flow is like this. Around this high, it's like that. And I'll just draw it for you. There's a lingering frontal boundary right in through here. So the weather stays on the western side of the Appalachian Mountains. We could get some scattered showers on Wednesday, but not a whole lot. You see, and as we go forward into Thursday, we just have these small chances for some scattered showers until we get to the end of the week. Now, what did you see? If I go back to Thursday, coming out of New Mexico, there's a front that's going to, a low that's going to try to ride this front. So it comes out here, goes over the Midwest, and then Friday into early Saturday morning, that's our best chance at rainfall this week, at least heavier rainfall amounts. All right, behind that, that same front lingers. So this is Saturday, going into Sunday, and another system shows up on it Monday into Tuesday. So that one comes sweeping across us early next week. Now, we don't have a ton of confidence in exactly where this is going to be. So we'll be talking about it all week long, and we'll put it in the reports. But that's where we see the next system coming through. So what that means is if I just show you all the precipitation for this week, that's through Tuesday or Monday. That's through Wednesday morning. Our first real chance at rainfall more than maybe 1/3 of an inch is coming through, here we go, on Friday. That's Friday morning, Friday midday, Friday evening. So see that coming through there? That's that first system. Round 2 shows up here. This is early next week. So you've got scattered showers early this week, mild temperatures. I'll show you those in a few minutes. Friday is when the first system possibly pulls through and delivers some precipitation. Then we go from there into the weekend, and we see our next big system coming out Monday, Tuesday. Those systems are more Midwest systems that drag fronts through us, and that's when we get our best chances of rainfall. So we stitch all that together, and we just look out there 10 days. I don't know, let's flip this over and show you the same maps, but how about for the whole of the East Coast? So let's put in East. There we go. And we just run this out all the way through Thursday. I told you, the models are not aggressive on putting out a lot of precip. So 0.1 to 0.3 inches, heavier amounts toward the Appalachian Mountains. And then just stretch it through the next 2 systems, one on Friday and then the one early next week. We're looking at 1 inch to 1.5 inches of total precip, maybe some places more than that. All right, so from there, what happens after that point? This is what we expect the pattern to do. If the polar vortex dips and sits here, that's a signal for cold. If we have troughs that come over the East Coast, that's a signal for an active storm track. And that ridge over Greenland is critical to getting all of this to just flow to the south of it and really crank up several systems. So what that means is over the next week, we are near normal in precipitation. See that? Wettest to our west. And then into week 2, we're going to be talking about systems. So next week's forecast, we'll be talking about systems rolling up the East Coast. I do not have details on these right now to give you any more information than that. If I told you anything else, it'd be speculative on when these systems are coming through around mid-month. What I do know is that the presence of that southeastern ridge keeps things more mild. Here's today's high temperatures getting into tomorrow. We have a bit of a backdoor cold front coming through here, which is why you see it a bit cooler along the Appalachian Mountains. But then as you get into from Tuesday into Wednesday, very mild in the middle of the week. Thursday, the same thing. Friday, still mild. As we go into the weekend, there is Saturday, the cool down, because that's going to be after the rain comes through on Friday, and Sunday back toward normal. But no major shots at really, really cold air coming through. Now, we looked at this earlier. Could it be that week 2 is when that colder air finally does start to make its way over our area? Well, the European model is the most aggressive on this. The GFS model is a bit more reluctant. So I'll just point these out real quickly to you. This map is the next 5 days. You see the very mild condition. Day 5 through 10, the GFS wants to keep that around. The European was opening things up for cooler weather. The GFS brings that colder air in day 10 through 15, which is out there past mid-month. So there's not strong model agreement right now, probably because of how high amplitude the flow is and how much the short waves, the weaker systems are moving around. Now, Europe is going to see this as well. They're going to see the tail end of that big ridge over Greenland. And what you notice is that a large part of Europe, outside of around the Black Sea or the Iberian Peninsula, is going to be seeing colder than normal conditions. And this is something I've been concerned about throughout much of winter, the winter forecast, that we might see more and more of that. Since we're international, let's go take a quick look at South America. During the month of November, there were drier conditions over here in parts of western Mato Grosso and Rondônia, pockets of Mato Grosso do Sul and southern Mato Grosso, and then just slightly drier than normal in southern Brazil. Now, did this really have a major impact on the crop there, the soybeans? Honestly, I don't think that it did. And one of the things that's going to be pushing this forward is that near normal temperatures, where all the heat's down in Argentina, plus take a look at this rainfall forecast. Spreading through the end of this week, let's just take you all the way out there to Saturday and Sunday. We've got normal rains coming back to Mato Grosso do Sul, Brazil's eastern growing areas. The only holdouts are Paraguay, southern Brazil, and Argentina has a very dry and hot week ahead of it until maybe some weekend storms coming through here on Sunday. But then even into next week, what do the models do? They fill in those drier areas with what seems to be quite a bit of decent precipitation, avoiding any sort of substantial yield loss in this area. Okay, from here, what I'd like to just finish with is maybe that long-range outlook. So we did a quick jaunt over to some international weather. Let's now go back to here. You see, we've been keeping an eye on the behavior of this La Nina, right? I have been saying that I think at the start of the new year, we're going to start to see it falling apart. We may even start to see pieces of that maybe as soon as December 15th. That's been my argument. I could definitely be wrong on this, but what I see right now is if the MJO does collapse back into what we call null space, that's at least an indication that the trade winds aren't nearly as persistent and strong as they were. They're coming in little bursts. See these? These are little wind bursts that we're seeing here out of the Pacific Ocean. What easterly wind bursts? So the MJO is going to kind of go back and forth, I think, between phases 6 and 7 a lot, maybe even over into 5, 6, and 7 a lot over the coming days. These westerly winds in the Indian Ocean, I need to watch to see if they're going to continue to back off. Because of this behavior in the MJO, the high latitude blocking, like over Greenland, and the negative PNA, that's the trough over the western United States, this is what the new outlook for week 3 and week 4 looks like from the CPC. You see, they're calling from mid-December beyond better chances of that cold air being let out. And they're not calling for you to be dry. If there's dryness, it's in the south connecting back over to Southern California. And I agree with this. This is a great forecast of what we think might happen. This is also a very La Nina-like forecast, which, given those trade winds, we're still very much dealing with a La Nina. But I'd like to now show you what their new long-range forecast suggests. This is their forecast for January, February, and March. Now, colder north of that arrow, and you see more mild south of that one. This would suggest quite a bit more southeast ridging, with jet stream troughs coming into the west and then ejecting through the central part of the United States. So do we, in fact, maintain a more mild bias for winter? If La Nina dominates and I'm wrong about it, yeah, it will be this way. If it doesn't, and big Greenland blocks come in, high pressure sits over the North Pole, and the polar vortex splits, then this isn't going to verify. Can I tell you which one it's going to be today? No, I've been scratching my head about this all weekend, and I'm going to continue to stare at it all week long to see what's going to happen. It'll really help that late tonight, and I'll put this in my new long-range video that I released to those that subscribe. We'll put that in there to show you all what's going on. The precipitation side of this, again, January, February, March. Remember, I told you I'm most concerned about what drought's going to do. This I don't like, keeping the drought in the plains. But this active Ohio River Valley storm track means that the likelihood of drought continuing to develop in the Carolinas, Virginia, is low. I know you're going, but I see dryness here. I'm telling you, I do not think this is fully going to be as dry as the models may suggest. Now, so much my long-range forecast is predicated on this La Nina fading. And right now, you could say that it's not. I mean, if you look at the ocean temperatures right here in the middle part of the Pacific Ocean, they're still pretty steady at this point. Where we're beginning to see a fade is already happening right up next to the coast of South America, right in through here. If I can get this to change over, let's try it again. Let's go back one more shot. Whoop, apologize for that. There we go. Do you see this? See this starting to warm up here? That's the trend I'm going to watch for first, because if the La Nina begins to let go, it tends to let go over here to the east first, and then it tends to spread across the rest of the ocean. All right. So all of that to tell you that this map, by the time we get through this winter, has to change considerably in order for 2023 to be a success. So let's watch it. I'll keep you updated. Be aware of a very volatile pattern and a lot of shifts in this weather forecast for the next 10 to 15 days as we fully go into winter. All right. Have a good one. We'll talk to you next week.